Okay, shall we get going? We are in council chambers. It's 5 minutes after 6 for a council workshop. May I have, a motion to approve the agenda is circulated. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Perry, comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, just before I turn it over to Doug, we are in a workshop, so it's a little more fluid than we would normally have for a council meeting, and also we do not have any motions. Okay? Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few quick introductory comments from me before we get going. First of all, welcome everyone this evening. We really thank you for investing an evening in communications to allow us a focused evening. This is really a follow-up from the communications review that was actually initiated before I arrived here in 2015. But with all of the changes and the things that have gone on in the last 14 or 16 months or so, it's not until this point that it's become optimum to have this kind of a session and to have a dialogue with council about communications. So the discussion tonight is just that, a discussion to help inform staff as we work towards bringing a formal communications strategy to council. We're going to keep it informal, an open dialogue, and get as much information exchange going as possible. Of course, beyond this session, there's nothing magical about tonight in that we're always open to having those discussions either one-on-one or coming back with specific things, but so this isn't meant to replace the informal and open nature that we want to have on these kinds of matters as it relates to council's interest in communications, but we'll spend some dedicated time tonight. With that huge PowerPoint in front of you, you're probably already wondering how you're possibly going to be out of here by 10 o'clock when we go through 40 slides. But you'll be happy to know that slide deck is for reference. That we're not going to go through that slide deck, and Stephanie will comment on the origins of that slide deck, but it's there for reference in case you want to point to anything in there either tonight or later on. So while the appointment in the calendar is from 6 till 9, just so you know, our intention is to get you out of here by 7:30, but there's lots of time. If the discussion requires it, then we've got as much time in the calendar as we need. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm using the wireless mic today, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If there's an issue, let me know. Just gives me a little bit more flexibility, like Mr. CAO was saying. We're going to be doing a little bit more of an informal session today, so I am going to be walking around. I'm going to be writing as well on the board, and just the writing on the board is really just for my own purposes, so that when I take it back to my team, it really helps me kind of organize and identify different themes that come about from the discussion. And I just find that writing it down also sometimes helps participants, because then they can see what other people are actually talking about. Unfortunately, my handwriting does need some work, so I will do my very best to be clear. So again, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you so much for coming today. I know personally how many evenings you guys all spend here at Town Hall, so I really appreciate you guys investing an evening in communications. And as council, you represent our community, so what your feedback is for informing this strategy is really critical. And like we said, it's going to be a little bit different than any other council workshop you've probably attended. The goal is really to gather feedback from you in an informal way, and that feedback is going to be used to inform the communication strategy as it continues to develop. So we've been doing focus groups already, and we're going to continue doing focus groups with citizens over the next couple of months. And at the end of that, all of the information that we've gathered is going to be called together in order to identify some themes and focus areas of where we need to be directing our energy. So I apologize for looking at my notes as we go through tonight's activities, and I'm doing that just so I make sure that I don't forget anything, because this is kind of a rare opportunity to really focus on communications and have so many of you in the same room. Like we said, we have the full 3 hours scheduled. I don't think we're going to require that. And again, any of you are always welcome to speak one-on-one with myself or Doug at any point in time if you have questions or concerns about communications. So the first part of the evening is going to be a formal focus group. So I'm going to ask a series of fairly open-ended questions to encourage discussion. And the format's going to be a little bit different than I would necessarily normally run a focus group, only because of the nature of this room and the way the evening is recorded and the sound system. So normally I would have a lot of talking amongst each other. Because we have to signify who's speaking by hitting on the mics, that may not work as well. So we're going to kind of play it by ear and see how things go. But I encourage you to direct comments to each other, as well as to myself as the facilitator. So our shared vision is obviously to ensure that communications not only meets but exceeds community and council expectations. So the information gathered here today will hopefully help us in that. The questions in the first part may seem rather vague at times, but the purpose is to inspire and direct conversation. I will do my best not to interrupt. However, as any moderator will tell you, it is sometimes necessary in order to ensure we get through all of the questions. The first part, again, is about information gathering. I won't necessarily be responding to any of your feedback at that time, so I don't want anybody to feel that I'm ignoring a question or a concern. That the purpose is to gather all of those questions and concerns and address them at a later date so that we have the best information possible. So again, I'm going to be writing down your comments, and we are recording this session, and we're going to be transcribing it as well to inform the strategy. So many of the questions that I'm going to ask are similar to the questions being asked in the community focus groups, and the reason for that is to allow us to draw better comparisons and find commonalities that will help us to align community and council feedback. So, my computer is finally up and running. So I'm going to move forward into the focus group session. The second session is really a SWOT analysis and a Q&A. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing corporate communications right now, and then open the floor for some questions. At the end of the slides in that section, if you have a question or a concern or a comment about that particular slide, then you're welcome to bring that up at this time. So question number 1 is, what does good town communications look like to you? So you guys can kind of think about that for a second. I'm going to actually move this over because we do have somebody from the audience here. So I actually want them to be able to see what we're writing. So I'm going to move it around a little bit. Can you guys see okay? Can you be able to see? Okay. Again, my handwriting is rather vague. So you don't need to write it down. You can just raise your hand.
It's a proactive conversation.
Sorry?
A proactive conversation.
Okay. So, timely, yes. Yeah, and then I'll just repeat it for the microphones. No Donald Trump language, no. Easy to read. Yeah.
Okay, we're loosey-goosey, and I'm perfectly fine with that, and we're not using the microphones because it's really difficult to manage, quite frankly, this way. So, Stephanie, if I could just ask you to repeat what you're writing down, because I know that Councillor Gartner, as an example, is listening.
She is.
Thank you.
So the things that we've written down so far are proactive communications, timely, making sure staff and council are aware of everything, easy to read, informative. It can be internal as well as external. The communication strategy will also be addressing internal communications as well. So any of your feedback, if you have feedback that's internal as well as external, now is a good time to say it as well.
I think whenever there's a conversation between the CAO and any of us, where probably we should all be included on it, but it's an inclusive conversation. It's not one that's going on outside of I don't want to say behind anybody's back, but outside of typical.
Sure. So looping everyone in on counselor CAO conversations. Okay. Right. So looping in on pertinent conversations. Do you have an example?
I'm going through some emails right now that, you know, there's ones, you know, it's important that we all, that not one of us direct staff to go do things, and that we also have open conversations between ourselves. If I'm discussing like a motion that I'm looking to put forward with the CAO, I don't think that I should have to send that out there. But if you're expecting action right then and there, without any of us, you know, to go look into something, I don't think anybody has an issue. But if you're expecting a conversation with an action taking place, I don't think that's, I think we should all leave it with that.
Okay. So and we don't actually need to have necessarily, we don't need to resolve issues tonight. It's just about saying, this is what I think is an issue, so that we can have that on the record for the strategy, so that we can move forward with looking at how we might address that in the future. Councillor Humphreys.
So I also see it as powerful communication, all different methods.
So powerful push.
So everything like from Twitter, Facebook, text, to mobile signs, to depending on the significance of the issue. And then another one, we're getting there, that our web page is extremely user friendly and very, very clear and good. To the point. Easy to read, easy to navigate.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that. So web page is user-friendly and easy to read and navigate. It is. Okay, so I'm going to say two-way conversation. So So I'm going to say everyone understands policies and procedures and that we're consistent in our communication. Okay, that's good. Anyone else on this one? Councillor Abel.
When you're communicating, it should be collaborative.
Okay, snow event.
For example, IDS has said that they would probably deploy when the snow accumulation was there, and bylaw will start enforcing, so that you've got a collaborative approach and everyone's doing it. We all know.
Okay, so you mean internally that we're all on the same page and we're collaborating? Okay, good. So I'm going to move on to the next question. So I'm just going to throw it up on the screen for you guys. So this one is a little bit trickier. So how do you think town communications should differ from mayor and council communications? So each of you communicates with residents through different ways, through different channels. What do you think the difference should be in terms of how the town communicates, or what the town communicates, and what mayor and council communicates? It's a tougher question. Yep.
Town communication
Okay, so what I'm gonna, for the sake of those watching at home, so I'm gonna say town communications should be what the final decision is, and council should be about motions, so no, okay. And what you're working on,
Well, it's more of the town's perspective should be, the town, shouldn't be any individual sitting at this table. Whereas our individually, we can pretty much anything.
Walk it back for a minute. What do you mean by mayor and council communication, first of all?
so,
Jeff Daw tweeting out on his account or Jeff Daw sending us something from the town?
I took it as tweeting, as social media, our own personal.
yep, yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, so, yes, exactly.
One person, so the difference is it's one person's perspective or opinion on a topic as opposed to the town's position.
Good, okay.
example, we decide on a policy, whatever that is, and then we'll get asked about that policy as counselors, and depending on how we personally felt, who represented residents, we could say, yes, it's a policy, I saw it this way, however, here's how it turned out, and I support it. At the end of the day, I think what's important with good communication, whatever policy is decided on, as a council, I have to be very careful that if the town sticks with the policy communication, and on my perspective, is delivered in my
Okay. So the town sticks with the policy and counselors are okay with their opinions about the issue?
to portray what we were thinking of when we were.
Okay. Right. Yep. No, I know what you mean, yeah. So not persuasive. Okay, good. Okay. So that's a really good example. So the clear bags one. So the thought was that the town was one-sided in the communication, and that was before the decision-making was done. So I'm kind of going to go off script a little bit. So what would, around that issue, what would have been good communication around that issue before a decision was made?
Yeah, the council's looking into possibly instituting clear bags policy.
So council looking into it, state the pros and cons. Good, yeah. So ask for feedback. Good, okay. That's great, that's a really good example.
And that would be the difference between our personal stuff. If I have a personal opinion on what clear bags, on my personal stuff, I'm going to turn around and say, hey, you know what? We're thinking about doing this. I don't agree with it, or I agree with it, and this is why. That's the difference between our personal
Yep,
social media and the town's media.
okay, so that's great. That's a good example of town versus councilor communications. Okay, does anyone have anything else on that one? Councilor Abel. No, not at all. No, we're not talking about a code of conduct or anything like that. And yeah, and again, it's just about gathering what your perceptions are and what your feedback is on that. So, perfect. So we'll just move on to the next question. So, in your opinion, what town communications have been the most effective? So again, this doesn't have to be something that is recent. It can go back a long way. And this is very helpful, particularly to me as somebody who's new. I don't have that organizational knowledge, and many of you have been here for quite some time, or numerous council terms. So your feedback may go farther back. Could be something yesterday or 10 years ago.
Almost depends on what the issue is.
Yeah?
Because, I'll use the example of my three daughters. I communicate with them three different ways, just because of who they are. And so it's an example to next door. I know that, I was a lot tweeting, and that worked well in that circumstance, but then you also get people who say, well, why were you on the radio, and things like that. I think it's really, it's almost situational.
Okay.
If you're looking for public planning notices, there's a mindset to see it in one way. And if you're looking for what's going on, for kids programs, you're thinking in different ways. So I think you should kind of focus on that.
Okay, so yep.
I often think of that, like, if we had almost like a checklist of things we do,
We do.
and it's just, we can expect it. And then our residents learn to expect it, when there's a new way of communicating, it's added to the checklist.
Okay.
And then allowing our residents to understand these are different ways you can interact with us.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to repeat where we're at so far so that anybody listening at home. So we're saying it depends on the issue. So tweeting worked well in the ice storm. And, the mindset to look in, certain ways or places depends on the topic. And having a consistent place. And so the notice board is consistent. And a checklist for how residents can find information. Good. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. So we've got buying a home by the first time. What is it? The buying a home guide. I can't remember what it's called. Before you buy. Yep. And Twitter's improving, and the tax inserts as well. Yep. Yep. Okay. So that's an internal communication piece that we get from Central York Fire. Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. So here I've just got taxes by email and emergency communications. emails? You said sending your taxes and asking them to submit their email. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Anything else on this one? Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So I think you guys can probably guess what the next question is. What has been the least effective? Exactly. I can't help with the Leafs and the Stanley Cup, I'm afraid.
It's when we have something that's pretty urgent and call something quick and we miss notifying or we have sometimes people leave, we have to, and then we have a lot of resentment from the residents. But
Okay, so urgent issues, we sometimes miss notifying residents.
sometimes it's throwing them a little bit ago and not in time. Now, I don't know how you fix that, but I always hear planning, we just never see, no matter what we do, how out of the last two, we always get complaints that they didn't know.
Yeah. Good.
We gotta know what we get. I mean, the last time we did get one of those shocking, but other than that.
So planning, we always get complaints that people didn't know what was happening? Okay.
People who walk by, there's a little box. You can go grab that information. So people know what's going on. So then they read it. Yeah, I know you have to make sure it's weatherproof, but that's not that difficult. Or just go to the QR code. I was gonna say, how would I add that QR code? But it's all related now.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, if we're talking about through those communities, the best way.
Yep.
QR codes work, but if they're not, there's other ways as well. So.
Yep.
For anybody walking by, just see what's being talked about, see what's being proposed, and how to.
You guys are getting me excited because I want to start talking about certain things, but I can't. So we'll get there eventually. Yep. Okay, good.
Maybe not part of this, but engaging the public to provide, input, solutions on our communication. I think that's really important. There's a lot that we can learn from high resources in this area in our community that would love to help. In the past, we've had struggles with that, and I think if we would have listened more effectively,
Okay.
we're getting there.
We're getting there. So I've got Least Effective is the website. It's been a struggle. Engaging public to provide the feedback. We've got lots of resources in our own community that we can be listening to. Councillor Abel. Okay. So I've got public engagement as an area that we need to work on, multicultural engagement, same results as the past, and new innovative ideas are required.
Yeah, so you don't have to use, it can be useful, but I mean,
Yeah,
you can go through almost everything we invite people to come out with.
for sure.
Seem to get a lot of feedback. Whether it's visiting the website to do a pre-draft, or if it's to find out if there were repurposing uses, you know, it's not a huge engagement percentage.
So not a lot of feedback. Okay. Was there one more on this one? Yeah. Good. Okay, so what is the topic or the issue? Because the subject matter makes a difference. Perfect.
So those are, that's what I'm saying, like a new or different innovative idea. If you find one that does work, remember when we did the strategic plan, the first term, we engaged 40 interviews with community partners and leaders. So they could be from the faith, church, fire department. And then we went and did intercept interviews, and we got great feedback.
Good.
Feedback, as opposed to saying, okay, sign up and answer these 2 questions, and then using that as our engagement. So, to me, you're looking at one that's very effective and one that isn't.
So about best results through intercept interviews, street festival, root fest.
I think it's the same as what we talked about before, just being proactive.
Yep,
If you
get
just
out there.
put a notice out, hope people show up, you're gonna have terrible turnout most of the time. I think if you identify who you want to be talking to and invite them specifically out for a session, you're going to have a much better response because people, they don't necessarily feel flattered, but they understand you taking the time to reach out to them to receive their
Yep, and
targeted. And I think from time to time we have dignitaries come to town, and we're not always made aware of that. And I know that's not always your fault. Sometimes it's dignitaries not wanting to let other people know who's coming. But it's wherever possible just to be made aware. And it's important.
So for example, Stephanie, for the multicultural we had a phenomenal turnout at the Art Convention. This was a beautiful day. We used 3 staff each night to sit there and do nothing. You could have used those staff hours to go and say, okay, go and interview 20 people each. And let's frame these questions so that we can get quick responses. And let's do a little prize to engage people and start setting the trend. And that's an effective way. The least effective way was the way we've always done it. Well, put the ad in the paper, you know, and that's what we did.
okay.
I got one. Just on Councillor Abel's, every event that we have in town, we should have the Town of Aurora booth or tent there, and that is our opportunity to get information out and receive information. So the latest issue, concern, whatever is there. We provide information out, ask for it back, and you're just there. And that is truly, we need to be out there in the community at every event and think, how do I get information out and receive it back?
Okay,
And you'll
so
get people, you'll get lots of variety. What if you get a lot of people out there that, you know, wow, you're looking for my input? That's great, you know? not knowing that they can. It's just me, anyways.
So I'm just going to summarize the
Yeah.
last couple of points before we move on. So as an example, Arctic Adventure, we can interview people, get quick responses. So every advantage of town tent that has information or subject news, asks for feedback. So we need to be out there at events to get more variety of feedback. So do you agree with that? Yeah.
Okay, before you go on to the next thing, Miss Stephanie, apparently dinner is here.
Perfect.
So we're going to just go out the back, grab a sandwich or whatever, and then come back in, okay? Do we need a motion to recess, Madam Clerk?
Can we bring it in?
Motion, yes. Motion to recess. Councillor Peary, Councillor Humphreys, all in favor? Opposed? Yeah, we were coming in the back room. There's no sign there.
We're gonna bring it back in.
Perfect. Okay, so now that everyone's got food in their bellies, I think you guys did pretty well without food, so I'm excited to see what happens. So we're almost done, actually, the focus group component. So the next two questions, I'm not going to do a discussion on. I'm just going to ask the question and then have you guys answer it at your desk. So where each of you are sitting, there should be two pieces of paper that have 1, 2, 3 listed on them. So for now, you're just going to grab one of those pieces of paper, and I'm going to ask you to answer this question. I'm going to put up some visual prompts on the screen for you, but what are the top 3 communication tools you would like to see corporate communications focus on? So I'm asking this question for an obvious reason. One is which we can't focus on everything. So here are just some things. This isn't an exhaustive list, or it's not necessarily inclusive of every tool that is available for communications. It's just to give you guys some ideas. And so I'm going to ask each of you individually to write down your top 3. Maybe when you're done, you can raise your hand and I'll just come and grab it. I feel a little like a teacher asking that, sorry. And then I will grab your sheet from you. And so I'm just going to be collecting these afterwards. We're asking similar questions of our residents and our community partners and all the different focus groups that we're doing. And so it just kind of helps us pull everything together. Perfect. I have met the City of Niagara Falls as mayor, but I don't know if I've seen his. Oh, really? Interesting. Huh, that's very cool. You can add whatever you like. Okay, is that everybody? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take that, and it's going to come back with us. So the next question is the same thing. If you could rank the top 3 areas you feel corporate communications should focus on, what would they be? So in this case, we're not talking about tools, we're talking about subject areas. So again, this is just a random collection of words thrown up on a page. It is not by any means exhaustive or inclusive. You can think about absolutely, you can put parks, trails, you can put whatever other thing that you feel is of interest to you. Transportation, traffic. So you might want to look at it in terms of what are the subject areas that you get asked about most often. I'm going to go back. Oh, sorry, you still need the list. I apologize. There you go. Perfect. Yep. Doesn't have to be your favorite. In fact, your top 3 may be your least favorite. Perfect. Oh, it's perfect. Okay, so I think that's everyone. No. Councillor Thompson. Perfect. Okay. So I'm actually going to skip back a couple. I apologize, poor Linda. So I'm skipping one question because I think we've already answered that one. So this one here, I'm going to make big. So what concern do you hear most often? Sorry. Oh, we've gone way off. Sorry, apologies. Technical concerns. Well, I'm just going to ask it myself. So what concerns do you hear most often from residents about communications? Garbage and snow. Sorry? Sorry. We can come back. Parking. Planning? So yeah, I am looking at a wide range of sources. So the things that you get, so not the thing that one person maybe contacts you most often about, but what are some things that repeatedly you hear from a large number of residents? Okay, so planning is a big focus.
Yeah, but they're the ones that kind of get like a big number of people all saying one thing, right? Whereas the other ones are usually individual. Could you put in a planning sort of issue-based, and we're not giving too many overarching planning questions, but it is, anxiety, issue.
So issues-based planning?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Ojos.
Okay.
Town revitalization, economic development.
What? So how can council let this happen, understanding the process? So you think maybe we can do a better job at explaining and communicating what the process is? So I'm going to throw that out there. Do you think that there's sometimes confusion amongst residents in two-tiered municipalities around what's an upper tier responsibility and what's a lower tier responsibility? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say, who is responsible for what in terms of level of government? Okay, so region communication challenges, let's say. Okay. What about communication specific? Do you ever hear anything specific about communications? I don't like this, or I like this. Or is it more about the issue itself than how they get the information? Yeah. So mainly issue-based and depends on the issues. So willingness of the audience to listen. Right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute.
But if there were a less subjective truth, and it dealt strictly with objective facts and objective information, as opposed to, differences in opinion, that would, and that's where, your skill would be important, because you don't want to tell one counselor that they're wrong. But if there is, a wide divergence on politics and presence, I think that is an issue.
Well, there is differing opinions, but there's only one right.
So again, I'm going to go off script a little bit with that one, just to say, so would it be helpful as an example, because we're talking a lot about issues-based stuff, so things that we know are going to cause some conflict or concern in the community, would it be helpful if corporate communications provided a fact sheet, as an example, to counselors to deal with inquiries that were coming to them, so that everybody had the same information?
I would say that might even a fact sheet kind of thing would be kind of useful also for residents.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just points, because that gets them to understand the process, understand what is actually happening. If they can understand that, or if there's some misconceptions being put out there, no, this is actually what's happening. That might be a useful tool for the town to put up.
A fact sheet just very, like, very bullet form, here's how. And also when you got them, there you go, how can you let this happen? The fact sheet that says, here's what an owner's allowed to do. And they can't come before us and council, and then council's role.
Okay, so fact sheets to address, say, misinformation or lack of information.
No, we don't even see it. Right? We don't even see it, so it comes, we will discuss it, so it comes here. We go, how do you let this happen? Just something we did.
So and I'm going to use planning and planning processes as an example for that. Okay, good. Again, my writing is horrific. I need to work on that. You can read it? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to take a second to kind of get back on track here with our questions. So this is the last one for the focus group component. It's your last chance to add any thoughts that you might have, any feedback you want to provide. So if there's one thing that you want us to know about how the town communicates or how we can improve communication, what would that one thing be? Think about the most important thing that you want us to walk away with. Engagement. So engagement is a priority. Okay. So engagement is a priority and increase reach. Okay. Anyone else? Value. Okay, good. Councillor Humphreys. Oh, Councillor. Yep. So not afraid to put information out there. Information, okay. Yep, Mayor Dahl. Yes. No, it does. That's a good focus. So and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, and the strategy itself ultimately will address some of that as well. But no, that's a great point. Anyone else before we move on? That I can't answer. Okay. Perfect. So that piece ends the focus group component, and I'm gonna pick this up and move this away just so that I can actually, I like to see people. Perfect. Better. Okay, so with the focus group behind us, I just want to go through a few more slides and address some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing town communications. And at the end of each slide, you're welcome to ask questions, or you can save questions or comments to the end. It's really just more about kind of providing some context and information. And I'm not going to attempt to kind of answer some of the things that we've talked about in the focus group and some of the feedback. Some of that may happen naturally, but I'm not necessarily going to go out and address, like I said at the beginning, the purpose of the focus group is to generate that information to inform the strategy, not necessarily to answer and solve all of those problems tonight. So briefly, I just want to quickly talk about some of the differences and challenges between public sector and private sector communications. So this is kind of goes to Mayor Dawes' point. There is a significant difference. And I want to acknowledge that difference. I've worked in both, private sector communications and marketing, as well as public sector. And the difference is vast. There's certainly a lot that we can learn from private sector marketing and communications, but there are some inherent challenges in public sector communications, particularly around measurement. So private sector focuses on product, price, promotion, place, you know, the 4 Ps. Private sector objectives are primarily economic and, oh, I gotta stop touching this, and more easily measured. So as an example, you know, if you're trying to convince farmers to buy a specific brand of tractor, your target audience is a fairly narrow and prescribed group of people, and you can easily measure your success in sales. So you can, you know, like we were saying, you can send them a flyer that has a specific code or a specific contact person that they know that they're going to contact that person, and you can measure it specifically saying this person came to us and bought this tractor specifically as a result of X. Whereas public sector communications, we don't really have that same luxury. There isn't necessarily a point of sale exchange where we exchange that kind of information with people. Certainly, I do want to make a bit of a distinction because obviously Parks and Rec is a little bit different in terms of providing some of the services and products that they do provide. They are run a little bit more like a business. So when I'm talking about those challenges, I'm not specifically speaking necessarily about that particular line of business with Parks and Rec because it is a little bit different. So there usually is in the private sector that ability to draw those lines. The public sector is pretty unique. Municipalities are even more unique than a lot of other kind of nonprofit organizations in that we offer a wide range of products and services at a price that people are told to pay. They don't have an option. So we have a diversity of audience. So we have our residents include everybody from small children, teenagers, all the way through to older adults, seniors, and a wide range of socioeconomic status as well as interests and focus areas. So really looking at a much more diverse audience than we would be from a public sector, from a private sector marketing. There's also an inherent distrust in government with a lot of people. And so that is always a challenge in communication. Some people don't want to hear or look at your message, regardless of what it is or how it may benefit them, simply because it's coming from government. Competing against private sector for eyes, time, and market share. So that's a legitimate concern that we face. Private companies also have, because they're generating revenue at the end of it, they put a lot more money into their marketing and their advertising than we do in the public sector. And even though our message may be just as important to the end user, we're fighting with those flashy, fancy, expensive ads and marketing campaigns to get market share. So there, again, are some inherent differences, a lot that we can learn from both, and but just wanted to provide that kind of as a bit of a framework as we move forward. Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll try and address that a little bit later on. And again, a lot of today is really about not solving the world's problems, just identifying what those problems are. So we may not, come up with a solution or speak to that specifically today, but we will. The goal is to kind of gather all of that information today. Sam, do you maybe want to do microphones now because it might be a little bit easier? So if somebody does want to speak, to press their button, and then that way everybody can hear what's going on. Great. So again, just kind of going through a little bit of a SWOT analysis of what the strengths are of our in-house town communications. So we have a strong commitment to community engagement. There is a real passion amongst the team in the office, and I think the organization in general, about increasing our community engagement and getting more and more citizens involved in our government processes. So there's an increased focus on digital communications, so we've made some strides in that area as well. We're making improvements to our print communications as well. There's a lot of expertise in terms of branding and design that we're really able to leverage and improve some of the print materials, because we really do see that there is still that value for some of the print materials, and that certainly came through very strong in our focus group with our older adult community, for sure. So we have an experienced and dedicated team of professionals with a long and extensive history of organizational knowledge, which is really, really helpful. And there's a strong commitment in the team to being leaders in municipal communications. So those are some of the strengths that we have in the department. So now I have to talk about the weaknesses. So what are our weaknesses? So the corporate communications budget, as an example, is relatively small compared to the rest of the organization. So as an example, while $10,000 being cut from a roads budget might not necessarily have a huge impact on their bottom line or on their activities, it could have a real effect in communications. So as an example, one of the things I wanted to talk about was marketing costs for some of the events that we do. So we constantly, we have the events that we do all the time and programs that we consistently do that we are able to budget for ahead and say we know that every year these are the things that are coming up. But we have a lot of things that come up at the last minute. New events, new programs, new services. So in terms of budget impact, each event can have a bottom line expense for us ranging anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000. So a marketing campaign, as an example for RibFest, could cost upwards of $8,000 or more. And that would not necessarily include, that doesn't include staff time. So there's also staff time that would go into doing that. So from, outsourcing our graphic design to booking ad space, and all of the associated marketing costs that go along with that. It can range quite a bit, but there is a cost associated with all of those things. So sometimes a weakness for us is trying to meet expectations and be agile while still keeping in mind what our budget is. And a lot of that leads to I'm going to skip ahead to internal awareness, is, we're continuing to make strides in this area, but an ongoing challenge is internal awareness around brand consistency, timelines, and the impact on communications for town programs, services, and events. So we're continuing to work on building that internal knowledge and making sure that, everybody internally is aware of how some changes to programs and services or events might impact communications. So staffing and capacity continues to be an issue. We do hope that as we continue to work on job descriptions and bring on the contract to full-time conversion, that we're going to be able to address some of those challenges. But I wanted to bring your attention, this maybe addresses it as well, is the wide range of things that our team does. So I've provided the handout, which is the Q1 summary for our corporate communications activities. So I don't know if you had a chance to kind of go through it. But really, we kind of break it down into media relations, written communications, layout and design, marketing and advertising, social media, and website. And so those are just some of the really tactical things that the team does. And we do this summary every quarter. And it's really just to provide myself and the rest of management with an overview of the things that the team have been working on. So you can really see that, there's a lot of things that are going on and that are being done. And, we do always have a concern that we're going to run out of lieu hours and staffing time, because it does take a lot of time and staffing. And we're hoping that with the addition of this new staff person and some changes internally and some realignment, that maybe that won't be so much of an issue anymore. So training. Communications is a rapidly changing and evolving field. So the last training that anybody in communications received was about 3 years ago, and it was a one-day training on project management at the town of Newmarket. So outside of that, the staff on the team haven't received any formal training in communication technology, best practices, social media, or community engagement for quite some time. So that is a weakness that we're trying to address and conduct some training internally as well. We have had no budget, corporate communications, for training. So, yeah, so it is. So we are trying to work on doing some internal training and leverage some training from our neighboring municipalities, and hopefully I think that we may actually have a bit of a training budget this year, and I know that we have a corporate training budget, so we're really hoping to be able to leverage that to maximize some of those training opportunities for staff as well. So it is something that, from my past experience, because communications does change so rapidly, that training component and that commitment to ongoing education, whether even that's just, each of us taking time, every day to read a newsletter about what's going on in the industry and, kind of stay on top of industry trends and what's happening. It's really, really critical to moving things forward and making sure that we're on the cutting edge all the time. Sorry, the computer keeps doing fun things. I'm just going to go back. So outcome measures. So this is something we talked about, and I'm going to talk about it again. But outcome measures is a bit of a weakness in that sometimes we don't necessarily have the time or the training to tackle measurement of outcomes. And the focus tends to be on providing tactical as opposed to strategic support, which could also look like program evaluation and outcome measurement. And we want to be able to determine whether or not communications is changing behaviors or perceptions in certain areas. And we want to be able to make sure that we're kind of working with different business owners within the organization to identify what their outcome is, what is it that they're trying to achieve, so that we can accurately determine whether or not they achieve their outcome, but whether or not communications played a part in achieving that outcome as well. So it's really going to take some kind of internal capacity building as well for us to liaise with the different internal business groups as well to develop what do those measures look like and what are those outcome measures. Because we are not really just measuring how many people came to an event, as an example, so how many people came to a planning meeting. That's an output measure that we can look at and say that's a positive, we saw an increase. But are we really measuring how many people were satisfied with the process? Or how many people felt that they had their voice heard in the process? So we want to kind of look at some of those different measures and address internally whether or not we're doing that. And that does require some coordination. So opportunities. So many opportunities. Communication strategy is a fantastic opportunity. We're also, as part of that, we're reviewing our policies and procedures, a lot of which are fairly outdated. And so it's exciting to see the opportunity in revising that and the impact that that may have on the day-to-day operations and how we communicate. Job description reviews, the corporate structure. So I think that's been a really unique opportunity. With the introduction of a new CAO, communications has taken a different role in the organization. And we've really seen that, all of the directors and myself have been able to work as partners and really help leverage each other's areas and expertise and identify issues before they happen. And so as this is happening, we're really starting to see how being proactive plays into that, because communications is becoming much more aware of things before they happen. So that's really, that corporate structure is a great opportunity for us to become more proactive and move towards that model. New tools and technologies. Council made a great decision recently about endorsing the purchasing of an online community engagement platform. And so we're really excited about that and taking advantage of some of the new tools and technologies. I was speaking with Councillor Thompson on a break about some other tools and technologies that we're looking at that we're really excited about. And because I'm terrible at holding in my excitement, I'm going to share it with you guys all. But really looking at targeted communications. So being able to say, give residents the opportunity to say, I'm interested in receiving information on this, this, and this, and I would like to receive it by text, or I would like to receive it by email, or I would like to receive something in the mail, so that people can really say, this is what my preference is, this is the information that I want to receive, and this is how I want to receive it. So if I have small children, and I'm really interested in summer camp, I'm interested in Parks and Rec programs, and I'm interested in events for kids, then I can specifically get that information sent to me through the method of my choice. I say, I want it sent to me by text message. I want emails about this. So really being able to kind of use new tools and technologies to make sure that we're delivering the information that people want and not necessarily information that people don't want, which runs the risk of them shutting down and not wanting to hear from us at all. And I will talk about that on the next slide. So we're really excited about kind of looking at some of those other opportunities. The key being that we still want to make sure that all information is accessible in some format, so that even if somebody hasn't asked for that information to be pushed to them, should they require that information or want it, that there are ways that they can do that. So opportunities, again, is that contract to full-time conversion. Sorry for 2016, it was approved in 2016 for 2017, my apologies. And we're very, very excited about that. And external partnerships, lots of opportunities. We've been doing a lot of building relationships with external partners, some community organizations, and relationship building. So, looking at, I think, there's a great quote, and it's from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's kind of a bit of a digital marketing guru. And he has this saying that I just love, which is, saying hello doesn't have an ROI, it's about relationship building. And so sometimes, we don't always have a solid return on investment in that relationship building, but it's about, that ongoing relationship and changing those perceptions over time with people. And there's certainly plenty of opportunity for the town to do that. So threats. So I'm going to come back to the first point, but I'm just going to quickly say willingness of audience to listen. And then I'm going to come back to it afterwards. So over-communicating. Over-communicating is a real threat. And I'm going to say something here that is going to tie into the first point. And is probably not what? Oh, I got 8 minutes left. Oh, no. Can somebody run up to my office and grab my power cord? Jonathan, power cord. So that statement is, we will never, ever, ever get all of the information about the town to all of the people in the town, ever. Never, ever. It is not possible, nor is it necessarily desirable. Because again, people will tune out if they get too much information from the same source. it lessens the impact of the messages that we need to have impact. If they get too much information from the same source, that causes problems. We all know how many people get emails from different stores, and you just get it so many times that you're just like, oh, I gotta unsubscribe. And even though sometimes there's something of value in there, and then 2 months later you're like in that store and you're going, oh man, I wish I had that coupon, but I unsubscribed because I was really annoyed with the number of emails they were sending me. It's a real risk. So we wanna make sure that we're not walking down that road. We wanna focus on targeted messaging and giving people the option to receive information that they want in the channel through the platform that they feel most comfortable with. I also wanna talk quickly about the, what I like to call the quiet or silent apathetic majority. So the reality is that most people are going about their lives, they're going about their business, they have jobs and they have families and they have elderly parents that they're looking after, or they have kids that they're trying to get to activities, and spouses and lives and hobbies, and communications from the town isn't necessarily a priority for them. Here, I'll just, you can see my password. It's only my password for my network drive, or my little, my thumb drive. So, most people will find information about the town when they need it, and won't engage when they don't need it. And sometimes it's hard, we put something out there and we think, oh, we really want people to be engaged or people to really care about this issue. And sometimes it's okay, I think, if people don't. We have to kind of look at, when does it really matter that we get people engaged in something? What are people's, the things that really get them riled up? Snow removal, garbage. So there's also logistical issues in over-communicating. So one of those challenges, as an example, is, so say for example the Easter egg hunt. If every family that had kids of Easter egg hunt age in town knew about the Easter egg hunt, and we had marketed it to be so amazing that every single person in town wanted to come to the Easter egg hunt, we would have a real problem because we don't have the capacity to account for everybody. So we then run the risk of disappointing people, having people angry or upset because they were told about something and we weren't able to fulfill that promise. Oh, you were so close. It was like a second. Okay, we'll just reboot it. Yeah, it still said. That's okay. That is not good communications. I'm gonna send a message to HP telling them. That's okay. I'm gonna let Jonathan kind of do his thing over here while I continue talking about it. So the other point that was on the slide was getting distracted by squeaky wheels or a few loud voices. So that's another threat that we face in terms of how we spend our time and how we spend our energy. So it's easy to be distracted by one or two voices that are critical of certain decisions or programs or services or policies, and forgetting that maybe those people don't necessarily represent the majority. So some of the communication strategy is going to be around, how do we address that? So how do we address, what is the majority? Is this person representative of the majority, or are they just an isolated individual? So there are a lot of things that, so it is important, again, to listen, determine the source of information, the impacts, and assess the return on investment. And there are lots of things that are probably a good idea for us to do that maybe a squeaky wheel or a loud voice might bring to us, particularly from a communications perspective. But again, it's about, is this representative of the majority? What is the time, money, and effort that it will take to do this? And what is the benefit to the most number of people? So another threat is the failure to adapt to a changing community. So that's definitely a concern that we face. Our community is changing. It's much bigger than it used to be. We're much more diverse than we used to be. So what's important to one community may not necessarily be important to another. So how do we address that in our communications? And how do we address the different growth behaviors, interests of different communities. And realizing that, again, a lot of our residents are young families. A lot of them are commuters, so time is an issue for them. So how do we make sure that our communication strategy is addressing those concerns and restrictions? So workload, that's another significant concern. It isn't possible to achieve everything as much as we would like. How do we prioritize? And so that's why we're here today, and that's why we've been running these focus groups, is really to determine what are the priorities of our community, what are the priorities of council, and how can we best maximize those into our internal and external resources to achieve those priorities. Changing priorities, again, is another threat. So internally, externally, lots of priorities are changing all the time, and so, there's an obvious focus on adapting to those priorities. I'm gonna have to log on.
It did die.
It totally died. That's okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly
Cancel that out too.
cancel. I have so many passwords, I know, because I encrypt, my thumb drive's encrypted. Oh. My password is wrong. There's nothing really exciting on it, so you're, okay, extract all, we're almost there. Yes, skip. Okay. And the reason is just there's a whole bunch of numbers on this slide, and I won't be able to recall them independently on my own, so that's why I'm going back to this slide. So going back to what I was saying about the first point, which is, the vast number of people and the audience, and willingness of the audience to listen. So this is a number, it's actually from a 2014 or 2015, I believe, Media Dynamics study that really talks about the average number of advertisements and brand exposures a person experiences per day, and the average number of ads a person sees, and the average number of ads that make an impression on them. So when you're looking at how many different marketing and advertising messages that people encounter on a daily basis, and the average number of ads that make an impression on them, we're really up against some tough competition. And so I like to kind of keep that in mind, because it means that we have to work extra hard, we have to be extra creative, we have to be extra innovative, and we really need to kind of consistently go that extra mile to get our message heard, because it is so challenging. It's hard to get people to pay attention to your messaging. So I'm just going to talk about, for 1 second, we're almost done, is best practices. So some of the best practices that we're looking at for the communication strategy to help us inform moving forward is we're looking at best practices for at-large system communications. So through our research, we've determined that there's definitely some differences between communication strategies and best practices in ward systems versus at-large systems. Diversity communications. So a lot of municipalities and organizations, including where I came from, York Regional Police, have done a lot of work in addressing diverse communities and how we communicate and advertise to them. And so we want to take those learnings and make sure that we're taking a proactive approach to engaging all residents in our town and making sure that everyone is aware of the wide range of products and services and programs that we have to offer. So we're also doing research into social media best practices. We've done a lot of work on this already, and we've already done a lot of work on our social media policies and social media strategy, but we do want to develop some best practices around town communications in this area. Advertising and branding is another thing that we're looking at best practices from both municipal sector as well as private sector communications. And staffing and budgets. So we're also looking at best practices and comparing ourselves across other municipalities around what their staffing looks like, what their skill sets they have in-house, as well as what their budgets are and how they allocate their budgets. So, measurement. So, what does good return on investment look like? So I'm going to go through a little bit quickly, and I might actually, then I'll go back to that and ask that question again. So here are some things that we currently measure and how we measure them. So traditional media, we do media monitoring. We do trend analysis and keyword analysis. So what words are most associated with the town of Aurora, what trends are happening in terms of conversation and media coverage around the town. We look at the number of releases we send. We monitor how many are open, how many are read. We look at our actual numbers of media coverage. And that's both earned and paid. So paid advertisements versus earned advertising. So when the media covers something about a program or service we have. We also do sentiment analysis. So we look at what the sentiment is for media as well. Is it negative? Is it positive? What's the tone? And then we also look at ad exposure and circulation numbers. So how many people are being exposed to our traditional media messages. So digital. So we use Google Analytics and Sprout Social primarily. I also use a number of other kind of one-off programs for doing a lot of the digital analytics. So we do, again, same thing as traditional. We do trend analysis and keyword analysis. And we also,
Sorry, Stephanie, I was just going to interrupt. Do you have a number on the total impressions? I was just curious what the total impressions on average.
It really depends. So there might be some numbers, I believe, it depends on the post. And it depends on, I mean, I can give you like a monthly report or a daily where you can kind of see the impressions, total number of reads through different channels. So we do measure unique visits, so we look at unique visits to our website. So obviously through Google Analytics, we're looking at a lot of statistics around our website. What are the most commonly searched for terms? That helps us identify what people are having problems finding easily through navigation. We also look where people are spending their time the most, where they leave, because that often identifies a frustration point for people. So there's a lot of Google Analytics work that we do around that. And again, that will help inform any future website development moving forward as well. So we look at unique visits, so how many new people are coming to the website. We don't want to necessarily have the same people coming over and over again. How many new people are interacting with us? Same thing with clicks. So audience growth, so we're measuring how our audience is growing on all of our different channels, on our website, as well as through our different social media channels. Message volume, so we're looking at how many messages we're sending out and how many messages we're receiving. So that includes both public messages as well as private messages. We do a lot of work internally in our office around customer service, responding to messages that come in privately through Facebook and Twitter. So a lot of residents or send an email, will hop on Twitter or hop on Facebook and send us a message saying, hey, what's happening with my snowplow, or what's happening with this, or how do I find out more information about this event. So we do get a lot of inquiries coming in through those more private channels. So we look at followers, comments, retweets, replies, and total impressions and engagements. So engagements is a really important one because we want to know how many people are not just potentially seeing our message, but how many people are engaged in that content? How many people are asking us a question? How many people are having a conversation around that? How many people are sharing that with somebody and making a comment? Those things are really important for us. So again, that trend analysis. So we're not just looking at what is the trend for us and for the interactions with us. We're looking at trends with other municipalities. We're looking at trends just with digital communication in general. What's getting people engaged? What gets people noticed? What gets comments? What gets likes? And how can we leverage that? So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. We are very excited. Hopefully we're going to have an actual full-time person that will have social media as part of their portfolio in our office soon. Traditionally it's been handled by contract people, and internally it's been a shared responsibility. Fairly all-supportive of it, and we all feel very committed to ensuring that we have a positive social media presence moving forward. It would be great to have somebody that can really work on a lot of this information and drive it forward as part of the strategy.
Because I think, sometimes it's hard to know. So, you might say, wow, we've had 2,000 hits, but, how relative is that when looking at other comparators out there? And so, you're always trying to not just look at your own success, but then compare it to others as well. And so I don't know how free everybody is with sharing that kind of information.
So pretty free.
Good.
We have a York Region Communicators group, and as part of that, there is a social media committee, and we're actually hosting the next social media group and York Region Communicators meeting here at the town of Aurora coming up next month. But we have those meetings fairly regularly, usually once every 3 months, and within that group, there is a lot of sharing. I don't think any of us view each other as competitors. Our audiences are entirely different, so we try to leverage each other's experience. So we do share that information. Some of our software, so Sprout Social actually allows us to go in and do an analysis against other municipalities or other accounts of our using. So I can actually say I want to compare our day on social media over the last 30 days of the town of Aurora versus the town of Newmarket. And I can see how many new followers we got, how many new followers they got, what their engagement level was, what our engagement level was. So we can actually do that comparison. I'm sometimes reluctant to do that only because it can be valuable, but it can also be really damaging because in a lot of cases you end up comparing apples to oranges. So it's kind of like the sentiment analysis. The nature of the story sometimes determines whether or not it's negative or positive,
Sure.
not whether or not the town is portrayed positively or negatively. So it's the same with that kind of analysis. So say, for example, if you have one, Newmarket has a really hot topic going on right now, their numbers are going to be much higher because, again, that communications piece is very issues-based. So they may be putting out a lot more information, they may be having a lot of people that are upset about something, and it also does sometimes depend on council communications as well. So if there's a municipality that has a lot of councillors that are particularly active on Twitter, then usually the town's numbers are higher because people are tagging them, and there's a correlation between that. So sometimes there's correlations there that aren't necessarily indicative. So it's useful, but I always say I use with caution. But we do certainly share best practices and what's worked and what hasn't worked, and we communicate pretty regularly with each other in terms of social media and communications issues, what's working.
The agenda page on the website, I'm not sure if this is still a glitch because of the new system, but when you use the tablet or the iPad specifically, it doesn't necessarily show the agenda items. So I'm wondering, is that just something that's part of the new system, trying to work out a glitch? Or when you go to that new page, and you know how it shows the agendas, and they kind of pop up, and you can search certain ones. It's not showing all of them; they're not coming up. And then if you kind of turn it this way, you'll see some of them, but you don't see the other end of it. And then,
So can we take a look at that tomorrow?
but when you go on your regular laptop, it works perfectly fine. So I'm just wondering if it's just a system glitch.
It might be, we'll have to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Yeah, I just need to
Sorry, I just thought I'd bring that up because I saw it on the last page.
So again, I wanted to just kind of, provide some insight into some of the measurement that we do. Again, I think all of that is really valid, and ultimately we want to, dig deeper into those outcomes. And are we changing perceptions, and are we changing, behaviors, and working closer with the different service areas in the organization to do some of that measurement. And we're certainly working on that as part of the Excellence Canada initiative, and looking at our approach to customer service in particular, and building a lot of that ability in those surveys and focus groups, and a measurement into that. So we're really excited to kind of see how communications plays into that as well. questions, comments, concerns on measurement? That was a dramatic button press.
I forgot the second last bullet, something analytics. But I guess my keyword analysis, does that mean that we can find out how the public came to our website by saying, let's say they had an interest in about the 2C lands, development charges or something like that, and can we find out, I guess I'm not sure if that's part of trend analysis in terms of what keyword searches people are using, then we can find out exactly what's the interest. Absolutely. Did you just say that and I wasn't paying attention? No. Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential. I mean, I'm kind of nerdy about this stuff, and you know, it is a bit of a, you can spend a lot of time kind of playing detective and going in and doing this stuff, and it's pretty fun to do if you're nerdy like me. But the trick is kind of knowing what numbers matter and what numbers don't, and really understanding kind of why certain numbers are the way they are, because there are a lot of anomalies that come up for a variety of different reasons. You know, sometimes there's certain things that are happening in the media, and that has a direct effect on, you know, how people end up at your website, or what people are talking about on social media, or even their, you know, their sentiment and their comments, and the nature, you know, of their language changes depending on what's happening in the broader mass media spectrum. So you definitely, you know, see in the area, you know, these days with what's happening down in the States, people saying things, seeing an increase in certain rhetoric online that you wouldn't necessarily have seen before. So it's really interesting if you're kind of interested in that stuff, just to kind of see how that goes. But no end of great information that we can kind of harness from, you know, what people are doing and what people are interested in with the town through digital as well as traditional media as well. Anything else on that? So I'll just kind of end by saying that we continue to work on the strategy. We've made some great strides, hoping to have the crisis communications plan to the executive leadership team in the next couple of weeks. Same thing with the social media policy. We've had some approvals there, so we're moving forward with that. And again, the crisis communications plan is really a plan for how our department is going to handle communications. It's not meant to replace emergency management communications in any way, shape, or form. And we continue to do focus groups, and that has proven to be extremely enlightening and fun to do, just as it was with you all. But meeting residents and going through that process is really exciting, and I can tell you that they are all really excited and genuinely interested in what's happening, and you know, how they can participate. So we're excited about a lot of things that are coming up. I think that some of the feedback that we're receiving is confirming that we're on the right track, but definitely always getting tons of great ideas and you know, insights from people. So definitely, if you hear of somebody that wants to have a say and has something, feels that they would like to have a voice in this process, please direct them to me. I'd be happy to include them in any of our focus groups that are coming up. Yeah, we continue to kind of plug away, and I'm excited to eventually provide a final document for you all. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Thank you, Stephanie. I'll just go around the tables. Anybody got any comments, questions for Stephanie at this point? Harold, Michael?
Thanks, Stephanie. Just a couple things. With regards to internal communications, there's been some, in the past, there were challenges with silos and you know, certain departments doing certain things, and maybe that didn't always flow through to customer care or Access Aurora. You know, are these been addressed or in the process of being addressed?
For sure, they're in the process of being addressed.
So, certainly with your request to the focus groups, there were some residents that were engaged early on, and I'll send you their names. But just, residents in general, are we going to ask some of the similar questions that you asked us tonight to ask of the residents in terms of what they feel is effective, what forms that they would like to be communicated to?
Yeah, so that's really the idea, is to ask similar questions across all of the different focus groups, so that we're really comparing apples to apples, and that we're able to have some, find some alignment between all of the different groups.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Humphreys.
Well, name's Mike, Councillor Thompson said what I wanted to say, but just thank you again for your constant enthusiasm and really breaking down the barriers to really get this communication. We're seeing lots of improvement already. I just know when you get full force, it'll be perfect. So thank you for continuing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Maracas, did you have something?
Thank you, Stephanie. Do you find it's a benefit actually sitting here? I think it's a benefit for you to be sitting here, and so I'd like to think that that's kind of helped kind of give you a perspective of what's happening here directly, instead of just kind of watching the video or maybe sitting in the crowd. I think, does that help, or?
I think it makes a huge difference, for sure. I know a lot of people have said that to me. I personally find it to be a huge help. I think it's, it's being able to answer questions as well, being open to having council ask me, what is the impact of this on your business area, or what are your thoughts on this? Is this feasible? That's huge. And, I think that it definitely helps kind of breaking down those barriers, being able to have a better idea of, what people are talking about, what the concerns are, and, it helps with being proactive, for sure. That proactive piece, I think, is really, really important, and it definitely starts in this room every week, for sure.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. Stephanie, thank you very much. That was very informative. Looks like you've still got lots of homework to do.
A lot of work.
Well, it'll keep you off the streets for the next few days. Council, that concludes. We have no confirming bylaw, so if I may simply have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to Mr. Watts for coming out.
Our student has a lot of work ahead of her.